Hey everybody, welcome back. My name is not Brendan Lewis because I forgot to update the name tags. My name is actually Gabby Snyder, and I am joined here by Regina, and we are going to bring you the first of two top eight matches that we're going to be featuring today. Regina, how are you doing
I'm
now that you're
doing
named properly?
fantastic. Yeah,
Okay,
I'm doing
good.
fantastic. Had a small identity crisis, I guess, but I'm actually like really excited. Obviously, we've got to see these team sheets because it's open team sheet, and I have them like on the side. So if you see me glancing over, it's because I'm looking at like the Pokemon right now. One of them is definitely stuff I
Are they
think
good?
people have seen on ladder. Yeah, one of them makes me very upset because I've run into it a couple of times on ladder, and it is very difficult to try to navigate sometimes if you're not ready for it. But I think it'll be a good match. I think one of the Pokemon, especially, I guess I could say it since we all know what they're running, is this Entei. And it's been kind of fun to see Entei get a rise in usage because of the fact that, Inner Focus has now been buffed for this generation. But it'll
Yeah,
be
and
fun.
And Entei didn't have access to inner focus either, really, before the introduction of the hidden ability capsule. So I'm actually really excited about that myself. Entei has been one of the Pokemon that's been on my I want to watch this, I want to see how it's going to go kind of list for a while. So I think we've had enough preamble here. Why don't we go ahead and take a look at the two players that we'll be featuring today? So the first player that we're going to be featuring in this top eight match is Marco Martinez. A lovely picture of him there, as you can see. And Regina, why don't you walk us through these Pokemon?
Yeah, so you've got Grimmsnarl, Zapdos, Rillaboom, Heatran, or Shifu. That is going to be the Rapid Strike version, I want to say, and then the
Yes,
Porygon
it
too.
is.
So if you guys have been laddering at all at any point, I think a lot of you will find this team familiar. We've seen sort of that trick lagging tail Grimmsnarl that I think the first time I saw it, I had to walk away from my game because I was so taken aback and I went, what is happening right now? But it's actually a pretty decent core. You've got like that strength in the Rillaboom with the Choice Band as well. So just kind of heavy power in there and making sure that no matter how many airstreams your opponent might set up, as soon as you get that lagging tail onto them, they've got no choice but to go last.
Yeah, and Marco's opponent, Julio, is going to be running a Grimmsnarl of his own, but a bit different. I believe this is actually the light clay variant with dual screen, so that's reflect and light screen. Entei, a Galarian Moltres, a Pokemon that no has a lot of popularity right now, I'd say. Metagross and Porygon too. And like you were saying, I think Entei is really the standout Pokemon from this squad. Entei has gotten some use in the past. I used it actually in my Worlds run back in 2015 because of its access to Sacred Fire, which, if it hits, has a 50% chance of burning the target. So you're still sort of playing Will-O-Wisp odds there, but it's a very powerful move. And being able to deal damage in addition to threatening a burn on any physical attacker is honestly truly an amazing thing. But you also have access to a bunch of supportive moves on Entei as well. So I'm not quite sure what Julio is going to be running. I was unable to catch some of the games the other day, though I'm pretty sure a couple people did stream them just because I was busy getting set up for this production. Um, but still, I'm very excited to see these two players duke it out as we're waiting for them to jump into team preview. I think it's going to be a very fun match. I believe Mars, aka Marco, who was the first player we talked about, was the undefeated in Swiss yesterday, and he's made it into top eight as well, which means his undefeated reign is continuing. So we'll have to see if he's going to make it all the way to the top with that interesting Grimmsnarl, like you called out, Regina, or if he's going to, maybe run into some issues of his own.
Yeah, and I
So
think
I'm really excited.
yeah. The fun thing about this team too is when I was looking at it, normally I think when you run into both Moltres and Metagross, you kind of have to make the decision of which one might have the weakness policy or which one would have like a life orb and assault vest. And I think the fact that you have open team sheets makes it so this is actually a very interesting set for the Pokemon. That Moltres especially doesn't have any of the items you would normally see with a Moltres. It's got safety goggles. And I
Oh,
think,
interesting.
yeah, I saw that and that was kind of a cool tech because safety goggles is one of those, I think those items that when you get down to it, it's I don't want to say like a desperate item at the end, but it's not usually your first go to when it comes to giving an item to a Pokemon like Moltres, right? Like you have so much utility out of Life Orb for boosting your attacks or getting that weakness policy activation. I know, like you had mentioned, Gabby, a lot of people have enjoyed Moltres, and I think, especially for me, it was one of the Pokemon that made me want to get back into play. I saw Moltres, and I like love the fact that you could get that Berserk activation and weakness policy, and that was one of the more popular things for it. So, safety goggles, I really hope comes into play at some point here. I know that like Wolf's team obviously had it on that Dragapult, so a good item, and I think hopefully it gets some use in these matches.
Yeah, I hope it gets some use as well. It's been really interesting to me having seen the results of the Players' Cup and sort of watching that tournament take place over the past few weeks. Going into another fairly big tournament this weekend in the grassroots scene. I mean, I think there was 151 participants total, if I remember correctly. But to see that kind of go into this tournament and just how things are different, and how people have responded to the different things that have been brought up in terms of the metagame has really, really been interesting. So I'm very excited to see how this is going to play out. I'm really excited to see this matchup in particular because of the differences in the Grimmsnarl and because of the interesting tech that I feel Zapdos brings to the field. So, without any ado, I think we've been waiting long enough. Let's go ahead and jump into this game one. Good luck and
Yeah,
have fun to both the players.
that choice of just going for the straight top four on your team is also just one of those things that shows you how common that sort of lead is, right? In case you happen to be like me, who sometimes forgets that you're on a timer for choosing your Pokemon team, having that four just in the beginning is really nice. We're gonna have that Grimmsnarl and Entei lead from Julio there, and a Grimmsnarl as well, and the Zapdos now on Marco's side. So, like we had said before, Marco's Grimmsnarl is carrying that sort of trick lagging tail, whereas the Grimmsnarl on Julio's side is going to be that light clay variant.
Yeah, and I'm wondering if we're even going to see those differences play out in this turn one. I feel like having access to both Reflect and Light Screen for the full duration of Light Clay, so 8 turns, can really add up after a while, but it's possible we might also see Marco go for some big damage or excuse me, Julio to to some big damage onto the opposing side of the field just to completely circumvent that entirely.
Right, we've got Zapdos being Dynamaxed here, a really great Pokemon that we've seen get a lot more offensive use because it did lose Tailwind, but it does have access to Max Airstream. Fake Out from Marco instead going to go into Grimmsnarl and Julio's side, going to be able to stop it from doing anything, as Max Airstream is going to give Marco the speed advantage here, doubles down into that Grimmsnarl, just misses the knockout though, so Julio might be able to get something going next turn, but Marco is at least able to get that speed control right now, takes that damage from the Life Orb recoil, as Entei goes for that Snarl, gets to manage the special attack drops on both of these Pokemon. So Julio, though, able to hold on just a little bit with his own Grimmsnarl.
Yeah, that is a huge miss of a knockout there. That Grimmsnarl probably trained defensively enough to take an Airstream or to take a significant chunk of damage from a special attacker on the opposing side of the field. The interesting thing I find too is that this Entei already going for Snarl. So not only does Julio have access to Reflect and Light Screen on his side of the field, he has other ways to mitigate damage as well. And if Julio's able to play his cards right, even if he isn't able to get a Light Screen up this turn, which it looks like he is happily able to go for, Marco's going to really struggle to keep damage moving unless he has another tech up his
Ooh.
sleeve.
Yeah, so Julio's Grimm's not at least able to get that light screen up, like you said. As Fake Tears into that, Entei is going to drop that special defense, but Zapdos is going to go just for that easy knockout onto Julio's Grimmsnarl, just going to make sure that it can't do anything else that next turn. However, Entei is going to be in a little bit of trouble. Those two stages of special defense drop is going to really hurt for later on, but Zapdos is still able to at least keep going for that speed boost. Those Snarls, though, I think if you're not careful, are just going to add up eventually, and I mean, if you're going to be able to just click Snarl without any fear and get special attack drops, that's going to make it so that your Zapdos is a little bit less threatening than it could be otherwise, as Moltres joins us on the field, one of my favorite designed birds.
Less threatening, but I think it's really interesting to highlight the fact that because of those max airstreams from the Zapdos on Marco's side of the field, the Zapdos is going to be moving faster than the Entei, pretty much guaranteed at this point. And as long as the Grimmsnarl is able to go for those fake tears, unfortunately unable to use them on the Moltres, since it is a dark type Pokemon and prankster moves cannot affect any dark type Pokemon. you don't have to worry as much about the snarls adding up for now. As long as that Grimmsnarl's around, it's going to be a problem for Julio to keep attacking.
Feels like we're going into a sky battle as Moltres is now the Pokemon being Dynamax on the field. Grimmsnarl able to go for that trick into Entei, so Entei is going to be going last. We did have those 2 Airstream speed boosts from Zapdos, though, so probably doesn't have to worry about it as much. But Airstream from Zapdos going into that Entei, losing both that as well as and now that 2 special stages drop. Still does some considerable damage, but Entei still able to hold on here. Moltres going to be able to get away without any sort of damage on this turn now. Entei going for the Sacred Fire. Like you said, has that 50% chance to burn. Gets it down a little bit. No burn on this turn, though, as Max Airstream from Moltres is going to go into that Grimmsnarl as well. Not enough to get it even close to a knockout, but at least able to start getting the speed boost in return for that Zapdos, which I think this is actually its last turn of Dynamax.
And more importantly, I think bringing it so that the Grimmsnarl is going to be knocked out this turn by either another Airstream from the Moltres or another attack from the Entei. So Julio correctly using this opportunity to go for big damage onto the Grimmsnarl, so he doesn't have to worry as much about those fake tears adding up. But unfortunately, just a turn too late because that trick went off and we saw the lagging tail be passed to that Entei. The Entei is now going to be moving last, and that okay, that Thunderbolt did exactly what it needed to do, even though the damage was just absolutely not there.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, so those snarls actually might have counted a little bit against Julio because you just missed the activation for that Berserk, and you get the the paralysis from the Thunderbolt. Moltres able to get a second Airstream off into that Grimmsnarl and gets that second speed boost, but that paralysis is going to be huge, and that is not something you want to see from a Thunderbolt, especially. Oh, sorry, it actually missed that knockout, but Sacred Fire into Zapdos, no burn as well. This Grimmsnarl holding on with 4 HP. Man, seeing that paralysis, I think my heart just kind of sunk a little bit.
Yeah, the thing about paralysis, honestly, especially from a Thunderbolt, is that it's not very consistent. Even after all the snarls, you saw how much damage that Zapdos was putting out. But now, when Marco's Pokemon are removed from the field, which looks like it's going to be happening this turn or next turn, he doesn't have to worry about the Airstreams as much. He always has that 30% chance of his opponent not moving next turn. But Entei revealing yet another tech that it's brought.
Yeah, that Extreme Seed going to be able to pick up that easy knockout now thanks to that low HP. Hurricane, though, able to hit and pick up the knockout on Entei. So Entei going down this turn, but not before it took down that Grimmsnarl. That Life Orb recoil is putting Zapdos in such dangerous range, as Moltres is going to be the lone Pokemon on this field thanks to picking up that knockout from Max Airstream onto that Zapdos. So no paralysis danger yet, and at least Julio is able to clear Marco's side of the field. Does lose his Entei in return for that, but I think you're in at least a little bit of a better spot now that you've taken care of these two. You still have like that light screen up, but I don't think it's going to matter much when you have both Urshifu and that Rillaboom in the back.
Yeah, it's definitely not the best matchup for Marco going into the end game of this game one. Rillaboom does an amazing job of threatening the Rotom Wash. Most likely has access to Grassy Glide to deal super effective damage to it. We'll get the priority boost from having the grassy terrain as well. But this Moltres, even though it is paralyzed, will still threaten really big damage onto the Urshifu or onto the Rillaboom with something like an Air Slash or a Hurricane of its own. So as long as Julio is able to keep attacking with that Moltres, I think it should be pretty easy for him to clean up this game.
All right, this Rillaboom is going for that Grassy Glide. Goes into the Protect from that Rotom. As Surging Strikes from Urshifu is going to target down into that Moltres. 3 critical hit attacks. It's doing enough. I think I might actually pick up the knockout on this last one. Yeah. Yep. So Moltres goes down, and at least Rotom didn't take the damage that it needed to. So Julio is also down to his last 2 Pokemon here. That Rotom isn't going to be in a lot of danger, though, because that Grassy Glide priority... Oh, sorry, it's actually the last Pokemon. That is my bad.
Yep, it is.
And poor Rotom.
And that's just some good information, I think, for going into game 2. That I believe that Rapid Strike or Shifu did about 40% damage total with each of those Surging Strikes when you take it as an entire hit. And that's just a really important damage calc to know. Rapid Strike or Shifu is just one of those Pokemon that wasn't actually too popular going into Players' Cup 2. The Dark type Single Strike form, or Shifu, is the one that honestly has been the more popular one throughout the just throughout everything, really. So the fact that it's been coming back, the fact that it can hit 3 times and get 3 critical hits in a row is really huge, and I think goes to show it just does so much damage. You can't really ignore it.
Yeah, I think the nice thing about that match was Marco was able to, I think, stop Julio from setting up just like that first turn, that fake out. I think just kind of turned that battle into his favor because he was able to at least do enough damage into there that like yeah you got the light screen up, but at that point like you're not able to do as much because in the second turn you get that trick lagging tail, and I think that kind of makes a lot of like difference
Yeah.
for Marco's momentum.
Yeah, it's interesting. You didn't really see it take too much effect in this game just because the Entei did have access to extreme speed, and because extreme speed is in a higher priority tier, even though it moved last in that priority tier, it still was faster than everything else on the field, so it just went first regardless. But I think overall, the fact that Marco has that ability to threaten his opponent and say, "Look, as long as my Grimmsnarl's on the field, and as long as I can trick it, so you can't trick the Moltres again because of the Prankster priority boost to non-damaging moves and Dark type Pokemon interaction. You can really just throw a wrench into any momentum that Julio is trying to build with any Pokemon. So in game one, we saw Marco use that to stop that Entei from snarling, stop those Sacred Fires from potentially burning a Pokemon like the Urshifu. Um, it's possible that Entei has some other kind of, supportive moves that we haven't seen revealed on stream yet, but his opponent knows about because of the team sheets. So I'm really curious to see if we're going to see that play out a little bit differently going into game two. I think that both these trainers still have to lead their Grimmsnarls just because of how critical they are to both their matchups. Mars critical in a disruption sense, and Julio's critical in a defensive sense. But at the same time, you have to just be careful and try and play around. I really like how Marco's Grimmsnarl is built. We saw that it has lagging tail. We saw that it has access to fake out, trick, fake tears. I mean, these are all really cool moves, and you don't have to worry about the lagging tail item as much when running them. So,
Yeah.
definitely a very unique set. I'm really excited to see how Julio's going to adapt to it going into game two.
Yeah, and I'm expecting to see. I think, like you had said, that Grimmsnarl because it's just such a good Pokemon for utility and for setup. So Grimmsnarl and
Yeah.
Entei actually going to be the same lead we're going to see from Julio here. And we saw him click into Grimmsnarl Zapdos, and I think now that even if after you've known that Marcos's Grimmsnarl has that fake out, right? Like do you still try to like go for it? Because I don't think there's any other way for that turn one to play out. Like maybe you do something different with Entei, but I think that Snarl probably helped out to make sure that Zapdos' damage output just wasn't as insane. And as we are going to see that turn one Dynamax into the max airstream from Zapdos, honestly, if we see like a script for script like turn one from game one, I would not be surprised at all.
Yeah, I don't think that Julio's game plan went sour when he's starting off the turn with fake out, or being flinched by fake out, I should say, and then going for the snarl and Entei. I think he just needs to find an opportunity now to capitalize on this fact and not spend so many turns in a passive mode.
Yeah, and now that Max Airstream is going to be happening here, that Grimmsnarl on Marco is going to be guaranteed for like to be speedier than Julio's Grimmsnarl. So we are like now seeing that at least it's holding on just a little bit more than it did last time. So that damage roll kind of I think matters in this case. Zapdos losing that HP now as well. But Entei's Snarl managing to at least get that special attack drop. I think once you start building on those more, it'll pay off just as well as it did last time.
It will, but every turn you go for a snarl is a turn that you're not dealing damage, and you have to imagine if you're Julio, and we happen to know this because we get the point of view of Marco. If he has that Rillaboom and the Urshifu in the back, if you play too passively, when those Pokemon come out on the field, there's just not going to be a lot you can do to stop them. So I think it's great that we're seeing the snarl and the light screen plays again from Julio, but I really want to see him go for some big damage after this turn, if not even sooner.
We are getting actually the same exact turn too as light screen goes up. Airstream into Grimmsnarl picks up the KO here as well, gets another speed boost for Macros' side. We saw that fake tears go into Entei, so Entei's going to have to just. We know that it has that assault vest. Gonna have to worry though about getting targeted down as well because, like you had said, that Entei's going to be sort of a big problem for that Rillaboom in the back. Gets another Sacred Fire into it, gets the
All
burn this
right.
time though, so at least wins that coin flip on this on this turn and is able
And
to at least get some
remember,
visual damage.
yeah, and remember that Grimmsnarl survived with 4 HP in that game one. So burn damage will definitely be enough to, ensure that it gets a 2-hit knockout from that Sacred Fire. But we're looking at another adjustment that Julio made now. He's brought the Metagross over the Moltres so far, and except for the fact that most Zapdos have access to Max Flare, I think that this Metagross is a great adaptation. It can super effectively hit the opposing Grimmsnarl. It doesn't have to worry as much about the Surging Strikes from Inner Shifu or from attacks from a Rillaboom. Julio just needs to make sure that he can KO this Zapdos really, or otherwise slow the Zapdos down with the combination of the light screen and the Snarl so that it can't threaten the Metagross before it's able to really just start doing big damage to Marco's team.
Oh, I was so excited for like the Metagross adjustment, but that trick is going to be able to stop that Metagross from being able to do way more damage than
Yeah.
usual. That weakness policy getting taken away from it as it gets that lagging tail in return. Entei taking half of its HP down from that last max airstream that Zapdos gets for its last turn of Dynamax. Gets another speed boost from Marcus' side of the field. Entei still going for the Snarl. Oh no, missing the Zapdos though. That is not what you want to see here. I mean, you want to make sure that the special attack drops on Zapdos are going to connect. And I mean, Grimmsnarl is like, yeah, okay, you can do that, but it's not going to really do much. Metagross going for the Iron Head into Grimmsnarl picks up that knockout, but losing that weakness policy is going to make it so that this matchup, I think, is going to be a little bit tougher for Metagross to get the damage output that it probably really wants to have.
Yeah, and it's interesting to me as well that we didn't see a Dynamax from Julio there because you would think that, okay, my Metagross is in probably the best kind of position it's going to get. I have weakness policy at the beginning of the turn at least, and this Metagross needs all the help it can get to take one of these attacks from a Zapdos. But instead, we saw no protect. We saw the Snarl miss, but the Metagross was still on the field and still able to really just threaten that Grimmsnarl. So I have to wonder if Julio isn't planning on Dynamaxing the Metagross. Maybe he was worried about the lagging tail trick from that Grimmsnarl and figured he would just wait until I don't know, he either gets confirmation of that play or otherwise is free from worrying about it before he decides his Dynamax target. Also makes me wonder if that Moltres is still potentially in the back, because if you're running Galarian Moltres, 9 times out of 10, you really want that Pokemon to be the Pokemon that you Dynamax and use to do that big damage. And if you're able to get rid of the Urshifu and the Zapdos, that really clears the way for Moltres to win the game.
Oh, and Entei's last move before it gets knocked out by Hurricane is going for the extreme speed into that Urshifu, and I'm pretty sure that broke the sash on there. As Surging Strikes, though, still going to be faster than Metagross, which isn't going to be very difficult to do. Is going to be doing 3 critical hit damages. Metagross able to take this a lot better than Moltres did when we saw it from that last game. Again, though, Metagross is just not going to be able to do as much without that weakness policy, but gets the Rock Slide, is able to connect with that. Rock Slide's such an interesting choice to me because I'm so used to seeing like different movesets on it. I think this Metagross is kind of in just like that sort of rough spot. But yeah, like you said, that Moltres is going to be the last Pokemon and is coming onto the field in place of that fallen Entei.
Yeah, Julio very smartly, I think, sending out the Metagross at first, knowing that the Metagross could deal with something like a trick a lot better than Moltres did back in game one. I do want to touch on Rock Slide, like you called out. That is a very unique move for a Metagross to have. Traditionally, Metagross run Iron Head, Stomping Tantrum, or Earthquake, really just a ground type move, and then Ice Punch to give you better coverage against Pokemon like Landorus or Zapdos or things that fly. So Rock Slide gets you most of that same damage. The only Pokemon you really have to worry about not dealing super effective damage to is Landorus. And if you look at the rest of Julio's team, he has enough Pokemon there. Usually all you really need is a Porygon 2 with Ice Beam, really, to handle that matchup nicely. So a great adaptation that's really giving him an opening, I think, to bring this game home.
And Moltres is going to be the Dynamax Pokemon of choice here for Julio. So, we'd seen it in Dynamax that last game as well, was trying to get the Airstreams, did get paralyzed in that last game. And I think if you're Julio, you're just crossing your fingers and hoping not for that to not happen again. Metagross going for the Protect on this turn, but has to be careful because Urshifu is still able to hit past Protect. Thunderbolt into Moltres, though. No paralysis this time. Zapdos is slowly taking damage now from that Life Orb, as well as Urshifu's Surging Strikes. Whatever Pokemon's going to hit is just going to do a lot of damage into it. It's going to be that Metagross hits through that Protect. So I think that's like a little rough because that Metagross would have been able to actually get that attack off. It was able to hold on with just that much HP left. Max Airstream from Moltres is going to go into that Zapdos, picks up that knockout. We know that, that Rillaboom is still in the back. And I think now, though, that's going to be just the speed advantage on Julio's side because now the Pokemon who had benefited from that Max Airstream are no longer here.
Yeah, I don't understand why Marco targeted down the Metagross that turn. Yes, Metagross is a big threat in terms of how much damage it can do to both the Zapdos with like a Rock Slide and, I don't know, maybe Rillaboom or Urshifu with something like an Iron Head. But if you're looking at Julio's side of the field and if you're looking at Julio's win condition right now, it's really just to get this Moltres to get Max Airstream to connect with both Rillaboom and Urshifu. So 2 turns, 2 knockouts, pretty straightforward. I am really curious to see how much damage this Rillaboom is going to be able to deal to the Moltres in the future because I think that's going to determine who wins this game and whether or not we get a game 3.
And Urshifu hiding behind that Detect as Rillaboom goes for the Grassy Glide just to pick up that little bit of HP that Metagross had left. It's going to be this Moltres versus these next two Pokemon. Has those 2 turns of Dynamax, so is able to target down that Rillaboom, so correctly calls Urshifu protecting here, and is going to be able to get that second speed boost. And honestly, I think that was exactly the turn that Julio needed. Like, yeah, okay, I can lose that Metagross, but Moltres is still here for one more turn, and you hid behind that that Detect with your Urshifu.
Yeah, and what's also interesting to me is that after one Airstream, I believe that this Moltres should be faster than the Urshifu itself. So really that targeting just showing that Julio was, making a really great prediction there, and Marco maybe just not optimally thinking through their end game. If the Rillaboom attacking the Metagross definitely made a lot of sense, but if the Urshifu had decided to go on the offensive there, I think this game would have been a lot closer. But still, really strong game 2. Julio making all the right adjustments with that Metagross reveal early on and sort of taking away the lagging tail from the Moltres. I'm very excited to see what kind of adjustments we're going to see in game 3 because, Marco's brought the same Pokemon every single time, and it's really just been I have these strong Pokemon. I have access to my speed control turn 1, which is really what a Life Orb Zapdos likes to do when it comes to this game. So I'm just going to sit on the field, get everything set up, and hope that you don't react fast enough to it. So now that we did see the adaptation, we did see that Metagross as the reaction, Marco needs to ask himself if he wants to try and maybe adjust the Pokemon he's bringing to better handle that Metagross. He has a Heatran. That's probably one of the easiest picks to shut down a Metagross. Or, he just brings the same Pokemon. And again, maybe we see the reveal of a fire type attack or something on that Zapdos to better handle that situation.
Yeah, and I think it feels like there's not really, actually, a little bit of an adjustment from Marco that we're seeing here. It's still going to bring that Grimmsnarl, but it looks like he's locked into that Urshifu for that second slot instead. But I think those 4 are just so good against, just as a lead in general, right? Like, those 4 Pokemon are just such a good core together that I think it's almost difficult to want to break away from that. And Julio, from that brief moment we saw on screen, has actually already locked in on there. And I think if he were to lead that Entei Grimmsnarl again, I would not be surprised because now we're just sort of seeing that, like, if you don't, Entei is so bulky that trying to take care of it in one turn is almost impossible.
Yeah, but that also brings up an interesting possibility for an adjustment from Julio as well. We've only seen the light screen used on his Grimmsnarl, but you can only assume that it's running both Light Screen and Reflect. If Marco sends in the Urshifu turn one, that may cause Julio to set up Reflect prior to Light Screen, and then you have to wonder if some of those damage calcs we saw, from the Urshifu and from the Rillabooms in games 1 and 2 will be as potent. Just setting up that reflect early on in game because of the situation demands it might be enough for Julio to just better weather the strategy that Marco's bringing with him to this game three.
All right, yeah. So that adjustment for Urshifu is going to, I think, put Julio just a little bit on the back burner. Have to really think about his strategy this time, because if you're expecting that Zapdos and expecting to click Snarl, that Urshifu is just stopping you in your tracks, right? We saw Marco kind of lock into that fake out and actually went back into that, but I think trying to stop the Grimmsnarl might be an interesting choice here, but detect instead. This is like down to the wire here. And Urshifu going to go for that detect instead, going to make sure that it doesn't take any damage. I mean, that Sacred Fire has that chance to burn, like we've seen before, so it could be something that Julio was going for. As Trick is going to be happening, instead of Fake Out, as Entei is going to lose its Assault Vest, and Entei's Sacred Fire actually going into that Grimmsnarl. Instead, we saw it burn last game, and gets another burn on this Grimmsnarl as well, so going to have to take that damage for later on. As actually, Julio doubled down into that Grimmsnarl, did not want to let it get away with doing anything else, took care of that threat. And this Urshifu was just standing there protecting itself and watching its partner go down.
But really, I think the Urshifu got the support it needs because of that Entei. I mean, the Urshifu is going to be faster than the Entei regardless. I don't think that's necessarily a win, but knowing that the Entei has lagging tail and knowing that it's not as threatened by something like a Sacred Fire, getting that burn on it, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that a Surging Strikes will knock out this Entei. Maybe not with Reflect support. We'll have to see how this Entei's been trained, but I think that the fact that Grimmsnarl was removed from the field by Julio in turn one honestly was a benefit to Marco there. It's just given him the perfect freedom to threaten Julio with both a special attacker and a physical attacker at the same time, which I don't think is something that's necessarily compatible with the strategy we've seen from Julio so far.
Yeah, it's gonna be actually, like you said, that's gonna be really tough now, because Entei actually gonna go for the extreme speed. I think Julio is gonna expect this Entei to stick around very long, as Light Screen is going to be the screen of choice from Julio, gonna make it stronger against special moves like that Zapdos, going for that max airstream onto that Grimmsnarl, and is able to get some decent damage onto it, but is at least going to be able to get a reflect up next turn if it so chooses to, is around for at least one more turn, thanks to the fact that it's been holding on this way. Urshifu going for the Surging Strikes into that Entei, and like that Entei losing its Assault Vest is, I mean, it actually maybe has I was gonna say maybe has a chance, but that just looks like going to be a clean knockout there. And I think it's just funny
that was close though.
Yeah, for 3 turns, Entei was like, for 3 games, Entei was like, I'm going to go down, but let me get some damage with extreme speed first before I say goodbye to everyone.
It's what Entei needs to do. I mean, especially when there's a Pokemon on the field with a Focus Sash. That's a free item removal right there. Even though the lagging tail was in play, you just don't have to worry about it because the priority tier of the extreme speed is just so high. And it really ends up working out well anyways, because Urshifu now is forced to really be afraid of the Moltres, be afraid of those max airstreams we've seen revealed from it. And I think that Julio is in just a really awesome position, going for the Light Screen to make sure that the Grimmsnarl had enough bulk to take the airstream from Zapdos. And now just bringing in that Moltres at the perfect time to start dealing some really big damage to the Pokemon on Marco's side of the field. I'm curious how much a potential Max Lightning from this Zapdos will do to this Moltres under Light Screen. I don't think we've seen that calc really play out without a bunch of Snarls on the field, so let's go.
Yeah, we're about to see exactly how much of this Moltres takes, and it actually takes that so comfortably. And like even with that Life Orb damage and no Snarls from the Entei that we had seen in the previous games, like Moltres is like, okay, you can do that. I'm still going to be here, and now you have that chance to kind of match those earlier airstream turns. Urshifu going for that Surging Strikes into Grimmsnarl is going to at least, pick up that knockout with that last hit necessary. That like small sliver of HP on this Grimmsnarl, which honestly has just been holding on like a champ for the most part in all the games that we've seen it come by. Moltres is going to
Yeah.
round out this turn though with that max airstream. Going to go into the Urshifu, which thanks to Entei's extreme speed sacrifice is able, like you had said, was able to break that focus dash and make sure that Moltres could pick up that knockout.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that Julio let his Grimmsnarl go down there. We didn't see any priority moves activate. We didn't see Pranksters, so you have to assume that it was going for another Spirit Break. If he would have targeted the Urshifu, that might have been enough for a KO. If he would have targeted the Zapdos, that would have been a special attack drop there. But it's just interesting to me that he chose to, not go for the reflect there. I think a very safe call by him. He predicted the Heatran adjustment. Heatran is a special attacker. Setting up reflect to lower physical attacks really would not have benefited him. So even though he didn't get anything out of that turn, I think he was thinking the right way. And because of that, he has the best shot he's going to have to face off against these two Pokemon. We do know a little bit about this Metagross. Like you mentioned, it has a ground type move, a rock type move, and a steel type move. That ground type move is really going to be what this Heatran is afraid of. Otherwise, I'm not sure how much damage is going to be thrown around by it. So I think if Julio wants to win, he needs to get rid of this Heatran as soon as he can. And maybe once you're guaranteed to be faster than the Heatran is when you start to do that.
All right, and Metagross is to say, I don't want to take any sort of damage from this Heatran. Is going to hide behind a Protect, but that's not enough to keep it from taking damage from that last max airstream, which on top of that is a critical hit. It's nice that at least we protected that turn, and that last turn of Dynamax for Marco is going to be able to have that last speed boost for them as max airstream now for Moltres is going to go into that Zapdos. Does like almost no damage. I think we are now 2 for 2 on airstreams here, but Julio is still going to have one more turn of Dynamax, so it's going to be able to at least try to give itself a little bit more of that speed advantage as Heatran goes for the Heat Wave. Obviously not going to connect with that Metagross thanks to that Protect, but does just enough damage to Moltres to activate that Berserk, so gets that special attack boost for Moltres, making it a little bit more of a threat now.
I'm really curious to figure out how much damage a potential max darkness from Moltres is going to do to Heatran. I think that's going to be what determines how this turn is played for Julio. This might be something that he's calced for, it might be something that he's aware of. But hypothetically, if max darkness connects with the Heatran, gets that special defense drop, and then we see Julio start going for some fiery wraths, for the next couple of turns, a flinch could win the game for him. Alternatively, it might just be enough damage. Actually, Fiery Wrath plus a Rock Slide would just be a really nasty strategy from Julio in general that we might see him go for.
And both of Marco's Pokemon are going to be protecting on this turn, going to stall out that last turn of Dynamax. Zapdos still taking that damage behind the Protect from the Max Airstream, as Julio is now at like +3 speed with this Moltres and +2, I want to say, with that Metagross. Rock Slide from Metagross not going to connect with either of these Pokemon. But like you had said, now that Fiery Wrath and Rock Slide is on the table as attacks that you can click, that is where there's a flinch, there's a way. And you've got two ways to flinch Pokemon now.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not even about the flinching potential when you think about it. You want Metagross to be going for these rock slides so that you can deal damage to the Zapdos. I don't think a Fiery Wrath, even with the Berserk boost, is going to be enough to pick up any sort of knockout on the Zapdos at this point in time. So it's a play. I think it's an interesting play. If Julio is a little bit more nervous about that Heatran, which I think he should be, it's possible we might see the Metagross go for a ground type move. But, it is VGC. This game is so close. Sometimes you need a little bit of luck to help you, get that W. So we'll see what Julio decides to go for. I don't think this actually crossed my mind as something that could be put on the field before this moment in the game.
Oh man, and Moltres going for the Protect as Marco goes into it with the Thunderbolt, is not going to connect that. Metagross going for the Rock Slide into that Zapdos and that Heatran, and just barely misses that knockout on that Zapdos. Heatran though going for Heat Wave, obviously not going to connect behind that protected Moltres. Is going to connect though with that Metagross to some considerable damage, not enough to get it knocked out. Gets the burn
before the weakness policy.
Oh no, that is rough. So gets the burn, weakness policy activates, but that burn is going to hurt so much. And I think if you're Marco, it's just like, okay, cool, we can do this. I mean, Zapdos is gonna go down on this turn unless you protect it. And I think I just missed that because I was like so hyped about that burn.
That was a really rough burn. I mean, it definitely we saw how much that rock slide did to the Heatran. It would have needed probably the weakness policy plus a direct attack to that Heatran in order to remove it from the field. So, it's not like the worst thing in the world to happen, but it certainly is. It's unfortunate. We're going to see the Moltres and the Metagross move prior to the Heatran in this turn. So I think we might need a crit from that Metagross to threaten a knockout when you include the additional damage that something like Fiery Wrath from Moltres will bring. But
Oh.
still, just a really rough flip of the coin there, unfortunately, for Julio. We'll see if he can make it back.
All right, and the birds are switching off when they protect us. Zapdos is now going to be the one protecting this turn as Moltres' Fiery Wrath even gets the critical hit though on that
All
Heatran
right.
Rock Slide from Metagross. Not going to connect with the Zapdos because again it had protected itself this turn. It is burned but does have weakness policy as well. Just barely misses that knockout on Heatran but gets the flinch. Oh my god, this turn I'm going.
Yeah.
This is like a roller coaster. I
This
am. Oh my god, this turn was
it's
kind of a wild ride.
it's a really rough end to a game for Marco. I mean, you never want to leave a game in the hands of fate, so to speak, which is exactly what both Julio and Marco have done at this point in time. Marco certainly does have a shot if he can pick up the KO on Moltres
Oh,
here with Thunderbolt,
which
as he does. He just needs one of his Pokemon to attack this Metagross in order to win. So if Rock Slide connects with the Heatran, then he has it. If it doesn't, then
oh my
he
gosh.
doesn't.
Oh
So
yeah, and
that
that
flinch,
Metagross.
yeah,
Oh my god.
that flinch was really critical. Well played to both these trainers, though. I think find it really interesting how Julio adjusted his positioning between games 2 and 3 in particular. I really liked how he baited the hi, we're back now. I really liked how he, sent out that Metagross first in game 2 and just really sort of. How do I want to phrase this? Really sort of took the lead in terms of what the Grimmsnarl on Marco's side of the field was going to be doing. It's like, yes, I understand you have Lagging Tail, I understand you have Trick, but I'm going to try and control like what Pokemon you send it to, and really limit the impact it has on my team. It that weakness policy, I think, even though there was the burn that turn, just was really, really important in game 3. So really well played. I really love the adjustments from both trainers. I really love the synergy, even though again, it's not the nicest synergy, but I really do
Right.
love the synergy between having a Fiery Wrath and a Rock Slide Pokemon on the same side of the field. I mean,
Oh my
I would
god.
be quaking in my boots if that were me. Just saying.
I would be the one clicking both Fire Wrath and Rock Slide because again, like I think
Well, there
the
we go.
fact
That's
that
our friendship.
just that last couple of turns, I think, woke me up so fast because I think that's one of the crazy things about this game is that you can try your best and predict everything that's going to happen, but things like that burn and things like misses or even flinches, I I don't even know how to put it into words. It's so like
It's what makes
it's
Pokemon
yeah.
Pokemon.
It's
Yeah,
hard,
like
I think, if you're the player, but I think on our side, it's always so exciting to see it. Although I will say, Fiery Wrath flinches don't exist for me because they just never happen. I just don't get them.
yeah,
They're a myth.
it's one of the things that sets Pokemon apart in terms of, how it's perceived as an esport, both in a advantageous and a disadvantageous way. Like if you're the player, obviously, that's a really tough loss. But seriously, congrats to Marco for making it so far in this tournament. I think that it was just really a really good run. He was the undefeated seed going into this round. Clearly has mastery of the team, has some really interesting techs, especially with that Grimmsnarl. So I'm really curious to see if those are going to take on outside of this tournament and in terms of the Battle Stadium ladder and what have you. But also like it just makes it really fun as a
Yeah.
spectator and really fun if you're a beginner as well because anything can happen in this game and anybody can win at any point. You just gotta make sure that you recognize those potentials for flinches, for paralysis, for burns, for what have you, and really play to minimize it. So yeah, just a really well played game from both these trainers. Came down to a little bit of luck in the end, but that's Pokemon.